Everybody has a story to tell, okay? And we just need to stay connected to hear that story. About 3.5 years ago, I was approached to see if I would be interested in joining a new organization to set up a new international global program. As I have real desire to help young people in Japan, and as I believe I have a skill set to add something, I accepted the offer and I gave up a tenured position at a public university. The grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence, and the flowers are not always brighter. The reality of my new context soon became apparent. The grass wasn't greener, it was in fact browner. And the flowers were not brighter, they were a lot duller. Now, I should be very clear here. I'm not getting into a blame game. I'm just trying to express or tell as objectively as I possibly can the narratives that are in my mind to provide a background to this story. But I also should be clear here that the other academic members were mostly unaware of my impending arrival. The senior faculty had kept that information pretty much to themselves, keeping the other members in the dark. Now, this is a strategy that has been used by many cultures for hundreds of years. The British were very good at this in India and many countries in Africa. It ensures that information stays within the in-group and the out-group don't keep the power. So the power remains in-house. Japan has two phrases, madogiwa and murahachibu. Madogiwa literally meaning window sitting or having no responsibility, and murahachibu means being cut off from the village activities. These are strategies that are used by particularly conservative cultures within Japan and conservative organizations to try and separate those that are different from what the in-group or the powerful group want to happen, to the norms that they desire. It is simply a form of ostracism. And it's a form of passive bullying. Because I challenged the status quo of the in-group, I had the joyful experience for the next 2 years of madogiwa. Would I change my way? No, I wouldn't. Because I feel it would have been a failure of the mandate that I believe I had, and of the failure for the students to whom we make many promises. This disconnection of madogiwa took its toll. Now I hear some of you saying, madogiwa, fantastic, having a job where you have no responsibility, you don't have to do anything, but you get paid lots of money. Where do I sign up, you're probably saying. Yeah, I used to say the same thing. Except madogiwa doesn't quite work that way. You're always kept just enough in to never really be out. It's kind of like a mental waterboarding. Yeah, you feel like you're drowning, but you're never really drowning. At least that's what they hope. Now, I read a lot about the mind and the brain because I teach some behavioral science and cognitive science subjects in my classes. So I had an idea of what was going on inside my brain because of this disconnection, because it was starting to take its toll. Yes, I could see what was happening, but it was like an illusion. You know it's an illusion. You know it's a trick. But you still cannot help but see the illusion and the trick. I could see what was happening. I knew what was going on in my mind, but I just couldn't stop it. I'd often wondered what happened inside of the brains to people who got depressed before they got depressed. Why couldn't something happen before they got so-called depressed? And here I was, sliding down the slope into a cold, gray, dark, and lonely place. Now, this is particularly interesting because I'm often said to be more of a lone wolf than a member of the flock. When I first came to Japan, I experienced the most dreadful culture shock. But that was after some wonderful 6 months. I had the most wonderful first 6 months. Then I really had no idea what I was going through, what was happening to me. I literally lost about 3 to 4 kilograms in a month. This time, I knew what was going on. I could see, I could understand what was happening because I read the literature. I sort of knew what was going on. But still, I couldn't stop the effects and the results of the disconnection. Now, by disconnection, I'm not meaning being physically connected. I'm talking about the connection emotionally, connection academically, connection ethically, connection socially. It wasn't there. There was also a disconnection because I had lost connection to my previous university where I had many good friends. I guess I probably hit rock bottom in probably June or July 2015 in Vietnam. I have been going to Vietnam for about 6 years to do teacher training and leadership workshops. And this time around was no different to most other times. The workshops went really well, the trainings were great, and we had a lot of fun. You know, the teachers and the academics in Vietnam, they understand that to internationalize, to globalize, some of their normal practices need to change. And this is why I think they asked me to come over, because I'm a little bit crazy with some of these ideas. Soon after Vietnam, I was able to return to my alma mater, the University of Cambridge, for an academic event. Here, suddenly, I was able to talk to open-minded people, learned people, people who were interested in having those serious discussions. People from different disciplines who could sit down and share different ideas. I was also able to catch up with some friends, particularly one friend who came with me on a wet, rainy, good English day into Cambridge when I started my doctoral journeys, and then made the effort to come back to Cambridge and watch me kneel and be bestowed with the doctorate. And then together we walked out of Cambridge on another good English day, wet and drizzly. This connection with friends, with the food, with the sights, with the sounds, with the discussions, these connections, this was a catalyst for me to be able to take control and get things back on path. Let me explain what's going on inside your brain here. People who are suffering from chronic stress, such as the results of forced isolation or ostracism, they lose the capacity to be able to draw on other ideas and other thoughts, possibly usually good memories, and that they even have friends. And that this stress, this what they're going through, is not going to last forever. Chronic stress. Oops, wrong. Chronic stress, okay, such as through forced isolation, it affects the hippocampus. Now, the hippocampus is one of those parts of our brains where our memories are stored, okay? It's like where the WH questions are. It's an anchoring point for many of our memories. Another part of our brain is the amygdala, and I'm sure you've all heard of the amygdala. It's the emotional link. And lots of people have talked about the emotional link. Chronic stress, however, trims your dendrites. Now, your dendrites are the little things that look like roots at the end of your neurons. When these get trimmed, it increases the likelihood that your neurons are going to die. Chronic stress also reduces neurogenesis. Now, neurogenesis is just simply the reproduction of new neurons. I'm hoping you're getting an idea here of what's going on inside your brains once you start to experience chronic stress for extended periods of time. Chronic stress basically overactivates the amygdala, which then sends messages to other parts of the brain asking for more of the chemical cortisol. And when the cortisol comes, it activates the amygdala, and this becomes a kind of repetitive cycle. Now, let's be clear. Cortisol itself is not bad. Okay? It's necessary for other activities of the brain. However, eventually, elevated levels will lead to the suppression of other information reaching our brains, such as our memories. Studies have shown links between memory loss, brain shrinkage, and levels of cortisol in the brain. In evolutionary terms, when this starts to happen, what do I mean? What's going on when this happens? Simply, we lose the capacity to tell whether something is our next T-bone steak or a saber-toothed tiger. Now, for you, you're thinking a saber-toothed tiger evolution, that's years ago. It's not important. Okay, let me bring it down to something a little bit closer to probably where many of you are at, the classroom. Some of you may take my exciting classes. Now, I'm not being sarcastic, yet my classes are exciting. Please come along, okay? But, sometimes those classes do get a little bit tricky, particularly when you've been dumped by your partner, okay? Now, if you're being dumped by your partner, that's a pretty stressful event. And usually, when you come to my class, you have to make a decision. Well, do I want to concentrate on being dumped by my partner, or do I want to concentrate on Mal's exciting class? Yeah? And usually, what you end up doing is choosing to concentrate on being dumped by your partner, and therefore you dump my class. Now, it is possible to concentrate on two stressful things at the same time, if you like. However, the brain, under chronic stressful situations, tends to become a little inflexible, and it prioritizes rigidity. So perhaps if you are trying to concentrate on two things at one time, you end up with this kind of situation that I saw down Waseda just last week. Hikikomori. They may be aware of their disconnection is not healthy, but they probably can't stop obsessing about that disconnection, or the stresses of being connected back into society at the level that society is requiring. Perhaps for them, they need to be reconnected and connected with the family and by the family at the level that they're at, with who they are and what they bring to the table, rather than at some level that the society or the culture is demanding. And yet, how different is this to organizations and to universities? We should be accepting people for the skill sets they bring and for what they offer, not according to whatever the in-group demands. This is really not rocket science. People who are depressed have a harder time to learn new things than people who are motivated and excited. And yet, cultures and organizations continue to promote such ideas. We need to discourage this. People at any time really don't need intentional shunning, but particularly even more so in the contemporary age we live in. Our modern age has become very hectic. We've become very busy. Most of us have fewer face-to-face friends and fewer face-to-face networks. And in its place, we build digital friends and digital networks, such as on Facebook, online, on LinkedIn. Are these connections as good or as strong as face-to-face connections? It's debatable, and I doubt it. Perhaps the irony of our modern society is that there really isn't more difficult times. Although probably some of you who are studying for those midterms and trying to get your midterm assignments into my class and trying to get that dream job possibly disagree. It's just simply that more of this information is made available. And the paradox here is, what do? We go home, we sit down, we turn the TV on, and we stimulate our amygdala, we send it into overdrive with all this wanton greed and destruction that's going on. and we start to think that it's everywhere. Just think how many people in Tokyo were suddenly fearful of terrorist attacks after the unfortunate events in Paris and Brussels. You know, our modern society has become very busy. I really believe that many cultures are struggling to adapt to the new paradigms, particularly our educational cultures. We overload kids with homework. We reduce exercise time. And exercise is so important to learning and to memory. We make you study too many subjects, both at school and at university. We have crazy commute times. We try to handle stresses on crowded trains by putting our earphones on and pretending we're asleep. And I also believe that possibly even the traditional company-based nomikai is losing its power to connect people to the organization because people aren't finding meaning or value in the work they're doing. There's also a belief that young people today are more narcissistic than previous generations. Again, I think this is debatable, and I tend not to support it. I just think that maybe technology has provided a new avenue for younger people like me to express that narcissism, wherein before it was probably just in the company of close friends. You know, we all need to stay connected, whether it's digital or face-to-face. Any connection is necessary, even if it's not sufficient. You know, we need to stay connected. We just simply need people to bounce our ideas off, so that the ideas that we create, we have a feedback loop. Other people can give us some ideas back. If we don't have this feedback, we are susceptible to creating fantasies in our minds. And these fantasies we confirm because of the fantasies we created. And I think sometimes when our professors and CEOs set themselves up so they don't have this open feedback, they're setting themselves up for a disconnect. And they're encouraging disconnection within their cultures and within their organizations. Societies are aging. It is an aging world at the moment in many developed countries. If we are to remain and have healthy and meaningful lives, and have healthy brains, which is a real fear for most people growing old, that their brains will not be healthy, we need to stay connected. And I want to finish with this posting to a friend's Facebook page. And she said, "I didn't actually choose to be single, but it's actually been a gift. Your friends online and in person are where you can feel connection. Hug those in reach. We need to. I'm sure you have many good people around you." Now, what I'd like you to do is, with your birthdays, share them with the good people around you and start a connection. Thank you very much.